Complicated story, right? This one is really about attitude, isn't it? Fortunately, the guy was found alive. But the question is, would you leave your friend, colleague, or anyone you met there in a dangerous place? Would you leave someone behind who wasn't feeling well? Someone left Roberto behind. He, by a miracle, as I said, survived extremely difficult conditions. Just look at the videos that were documented, even by those who were involved there.
This way is Karatuva, back there is Karatuva, which is the point where people are searching.
I don't know. The story apparently ended, right, with Roberto being found safe, fortunately, but I don't know. There's still a thread to pull there. But let me tell you everything here. In short, I'm Marcos Campos. Welcome, everyone. If you like to hear real stories, subscribe here, because every week there are several episodes. Check it out. Roberto Farias Tomás, 19, began climbing Pico do Paraná on December 31, 2025. The goal was to see the sunrise on January 1st, 2026 from there, from that totally unique, different point of view. And with him was a girl from Amazonas named Thayane Smith, 19 years old. Here's what happened. Their friendship was about 30 days old, as far as we know at least, and They supposedly met at a tourist spot in the city of Curitiba called Largo da Ordem. On Sundays, there are little fairs there, selling food, handicrafts, books, antiques, and so on. The girl had been in the capital of Paraná for a few weeks, far from her home back in Manaus. Anyway, guys, the two of them had one thing in common, an interest in mountaineering, or at least a supposed interest. So, together, they planned to take on this huge challenge of climbing the highest point in the southern region of the country, which stands at 1,877 meters above sea level. The place is really challenging. It's a hike mixed with climbing that can last anywhere from 6 to 12 hours, depending on the trail and, of course, on the person doing it. In other words, it's recommended to have good physical preparation, good judgment, proper equipment, and more than one day for a safer and more comfortable experience. The route includes sandy terrain, muddy areas, cliffs, dense forest, rocks, which can make the hike long, tiring, and exhausting. The suggestion from the most experienced hikers on this route is to do the entire trek in the winter, which is a time with less rainfall. But regardless of all that, the newer folks, right? When it comes to hiking, above all, they ignored all that information and decided to do the trail on New Year's Eve night. What we know, in short, is that Roberto likes adventures and hiking, but he's not an experienced athlete, as his father even mentioned. As for Thayane, in her own words, she's an experienced hiker, has been hiking since childhood, and is physically capable of doing that route. Well, whether she was experienced or not, I don't know. What you can see in the videos she made, including that one, is that she definitely had the stamina for it. But I'll talk more about this later in the video, some things that contradict that point of view. That she had a lot of experience with hiking. These videos I'm talking about, by the way, were actually documented by her and are on her Instagram, okay?
Right?
Well, even though neither of them had ever climbed up to the peak of Paraná, Thayane's posts show the entire journey from when the pair met and left the old bus station, a bus terminal in downtown Curitiba, heading to the city of Campina Grande do Sul near Antonina. It's also worth noting their destination mountain is within Pico do Paraná State Park. The events of those days, January 31st and 1st, guys, were described by several people. However, the people closest to Roberto are Thayane herself and the mountaineer and trail runner Leandro Pirati. He took part in that part of the adventure, called for help, and later even volunteered in the search for Roberto. Just to give us some context here, the climb involves several stages, with areas known as A1 and A2. A1 serves as a strategic resting point, and A2 is closer to the summit. From A2, the final part of the climb begins with rock walls, anchors, and ropes. In other words, I don't even need to say that an experienced guide Someone who really knows this area is very welcome at this stage. But let's think here then about the chronology of their events. On the afternoon or evening of December 31st, 2025, Roberto and Thayane arrived at point A1 of the trail. There, they set up camp and made friends with other people who were also there, especially with an experienced guy from the area, Fabio. The girl recorded videos. In fact, Fabio made a very interesting video on his Instagram showing everything about the trail, the most difficult spots that require exceptional care. He showed where Roberto started to feel sick, where the girl separated from the group, but I'll talk about that in a moment. Well, Thayane recorded videos showing the tent, the campsite, the heavy rain they faced at night. She mentions the cold and the lack of warmer clothes there to face the low temperatures. The plan was for them to go to bed early and then get up around 3 in the morning to do the final stretch so they could actually be at the mountain peak at sunrise on the first day. The girl described the difficulties they faced, including the darkness of the early morning. According to her, even with the 3 flashlights, hers, Roberto's, and also Fabio's, all pointed at the same spot, the visibility was still low. Fabio later said that when the top of Pico do Paraná started to become visible, Thayane left the group and ran ahead to get there first. Like, you're in the ecological park there in Curitiba, let me just run ahead, man. You can see in the photos and videos the place is tough, guys, really dangerous. Well, it was at that moment then that, according to Fabio, Roberto was already feeling sick, even vomiting, completely exhausted. Even so, he managed to reach the summit, and when he saw his friend there, he hugged her. Thayane's videos make it very clear how adverse the conditions were at the mountain peak at that moment, a lot of wind. Other people were also there. After the 3 of them enjoyed the sunrise and took in the view, it was time to go down. This was already around 6:30 in the morning. In short, although Roberto wasn't feeling well on the way up, everything seemed fine. The real issue happened on the way down. Apparently, the amount of time wasn't enough for Roberto to fully recover from the discomfort he was feeling. Some reports say that he was actually exhausted, meaning way beyond the normal tiredness from a hike. The problems really started at this point on the way back, when for sure the rush was already over, let's say. And the pace could have been much slower, right? Remember that Roberto was going much slower and feeling sick, as we saw. Actually, there are conflicting reports about this, whether Roberto was vomiting or not. He'll probably clarify that himself, but according to the people who were there, apparently, yes, he was really sick. This issue of vomiting is actually a symptom of extreme exhaustion, and obviously it leads to dehydration, and dehydration can cause several other health conditions. I even saw in one of those posts about the case a person, a psychologist who also likes to go hiking, saying that this condition of dehydration can put a person in a situation of extreme vulnerability because they start to lose full consciousness. You know that situation where you know where you are, where you're going, the plane anyway? The person can put themselves at risk without realizing they're doing it. Well, on the way down, a couple joined this group who had previously been at stage 1 of the mountain and then later at the top. Regarding them, whose names were not revealed, what we know is that the woman had twisted her ankle, from that couple. Apparently nothing too serious, but it did require some care, like basic first aid. She had her foot bandaged, which meant her mobility was reduced. So they went down the mountain with Roberto and Thayane in the front group and Fabio with this couple in the group behind. However, Roberto was moving more slowly, a little behind his colleague, until another group of athletes passed by them. There were 3 mountaineers who were training for running. That's right, guys, running down the mountain. At that moment, Thayane decided to go with those people and went ahead, leaving Roberto behind, alone and physically very weak. When Fabio arrived then with the couple at support point 1, he immediately went to Thayhane's tent and asked about Roberto, like, "Where's Roberto?" Immediately, the situation became very serious because Fabio expected to see his friend there, safe, resting, recovering after that exhausting hike, right? But that didn't happen. Thayane was sleeping there peacefully. claiming that she thought Roberto would come down with the other people from the trail, since they were all on the same trail, just a few meters apart from each other. And here we don't have those details to say exactly how many people were there. Anyway, Fabio was the guy who saved the day at that moment after criticizing Tayane's irresponsible attitude. And he asked her to come back with him to try to find Roberto, who was believed to have left the trail. At the very least, if we consider that she had a lot of mountaineering experience, she should have known what I just mentioned, right? That the guy mentioned in the post that dehydration can disorient a person. And it's like, oh, the guy's feeling sick, he threw up, he's really tired, and then it's like, oh, I'll go ahead, and then he'll find his way and everything will be fine. Anyway, I know that, guys, just thinking about it, seeing the photos of the weather conditions, it already makes you desperate. Imagine being there. Fabio and Thayane then went back looking for Roberto along the path where he should have been, and as soon as they got cell phone signal, Fabio called for help. He contacted the fire department. The professionals acted quickly and immediately began searching for the victim who did not have a cell phone. This was already around 1:45 in the afternoon. Initially, a team from the Tactical Rescue Operations Group, GOST, was mobilized to start the search and rescue operations. Several hours later, 2 more rescue teams joined the search, which lasted until early Friday morning. There were many things working against the operation: difficult weather conditions like rain and cold wind. Also, the size of the area that had to be searched. Guys, the main trails, the secondary ones, and the forest area. The place is huge, as you can see, right? Besides this GOST team, a team of 6 mountaineers from the Mountain Rescue Corps, Cosmo, also took part in the search, along with 4 mountain runners from the Paranense Mountaineering Club. On social media, Renata, Roberto's sister, asked, please, for volunteers who could help with the work to come and assist. With no sign of life from Roberto after hours, 2 more GOST teams were mobilized with helicopter support. So the strategy was to send one team to search from the bottom up, while another went up to the top of the summit. The use of drones was also very important to check all the rocky areas, especially those with difficult angles to access, where the guy could have fallen. Night vision cameras and temperature sensors also worked nonstop. But on Sunday, January 4th, even with all the professional effort and Roberto's family's faith, we started to fear the worst. In this kind of operation, it's always a race against time, isn't it? And it's impossible not to remember the case of Juliana Marins here. Who remembers? I shared this case here last year, along with many others, like children or teenagers who vanished on mountain trails. Well, guys, and from that point on, Thayane starts to play a separate role in this story with the interviews she gave. Supposedly, apparently distracted to say the least, and showing no concern for their friend who was missing, disappeared in an extremely dangerous place. The information was contradictory, and her versions of the facts varied with each explanation she gave to reporters. For example, regarding why Roberto was left behind on the descent from the peak. Initially, in her first interview with Balanço Geral, the girl regretted the decision to leave Roberto behind and said the following: "We had a lot of things planned to do after this hike. I never imagined that all of this could happen. I keep having bad thoughts for leaving him behind, for having separated from him. If I hadn't separated from him, maybe this wouldn't have happened because I was the one with more experience." Well, in the second interview with reporter Kainan Lucas from Cidade Alerta, Thayane didn't say that Roberto had felt sick. She kind of downplayed the seriousness of the decision to leave the guy there when she said that her friend was very slow, and then she decided to go down the hill faster with the other runners and wait for him at the first camp. In the footage we see Thayane says that she decided to go ahead because that's her lifestyle. And so, guys, in my humble view of the world, style or any other crap that gets stuck in someone's head should be set aside. When you're in a situation that poses a risk of death to another person, right? No matter who it is, damn it. Another detail with 2 versions is about Roberto not having his phone with him. It was said that the device wasn't working because it got wet on New Year's Eve, December 31st. It was also said that it was out of battery. The device was reportedly with the young man's belongings in Camp A1's safe area, an abandoned house, and similar places. But Thayane herself stated that she was the one who had all of Roberto's personal belongings: cell phone, wallet, identification, and key. Since she was carrying part of the load, that is, her colleague's backpack. According to this version, Roberto was no longer able to carry the weight. At the same time, his family was very anxious, knowing that every minute counted for Roberto's survival. Thayane was definitely making questionable posts on her social media stories, right, guys? In one of the posts, we see a selfie and the following phrase: questions, investigations, wow, 2026, haha. She also wrote, Happy New Year, learning. Never again go hiking with someone who isn't experienced, it's not their lifestyle, and they don't have the energy for it. Meanwhile, her Instagram just keeps growing. Man, it's bizarre. In my opinion, these posts are what mess everything up. Because, man, what kind of parallel world is this, bro? What kind of parallel world is this, man? Like, how do you downplay something that's happening, minimize it like that? Surreal. Besides that, her various answers to the reporter's questions are, at the very least, absurd. For example, when she was asked how she felt, right? Regarding Roberto's disappearance, Thayane said, We can't do anything. We must stay calm and wait for the firefighters to do their job and provide the final result. My intuition is that they might find him, but very, very, very weak, very fragile. Asked also about the possibility of a tragic outcome if Roberto was not found or lost his life, the girl replied that it would be a decision of life, a decision or permission from God. Look, I just know one thing, man. I'm really anxious to hear everything Roberto has to say about this, man. Because, things start to come up, right? Some connections, some loose ends. Here, in the light of the investigation, we end up shouting. It's a bunch of little threads hanging down like this, man. I'm really curious about this. But, like, given all this, guys, the feeling was that it was something kind of unimportant, like that foul in the middle of the field. The match goes on, the game goes on. It's tough. We also heard other absurd things, like her appeal for people in the area to help, but not to go into the forest. There was a risk of venomous snakes and jaguars in the lower areas of Pico do Paraná. In her post, Thayane Smith shared her great experiences at the South's highest peak, even though a friend was still missing. But fortunately, it was with great joy that we saw today the news from Renata, the young man's sister, which she posted on Instagram, right? That Roberto had finally been found. Not many details about his health condition were released, nor any additional information about the circumstances in which he was found. The expectation is that new updates will be provided by the authorities and even by the family. After receiving medical attention, Roberto even made a video call which was recorded. And there you can see that he's conscious, able to talk, answer some questions, visibly shaken, right? But he's doing okay as much as possible. And Thayane, meanwhile, gave another interview, this time apologizing, there with a bit of a smile on her face. I don't know if it was out of relief or something else, right? Saying she learned her lesson, but that's a lesson, my dear, that could have cost the guy his life, right? Roberto's life. Confidence is sky high after that interview. Everything's clear now. Of course, there are still a lot of unanswered questions, and Roberto will answer them during the investigation. I don't know if this will be handled by the police, etc. So, of course, once Roberto recovers and he can tell his side of the story, then maybe we'll have all the pieces of this coming together, or maybe not. As for Thayane, she was described by some as being an adventurous person who likes parties. However, she also has haters in her hometown, okay? People who mentioned toxic relationships and who created Instagram profiles to expose and cancel the young woman. This was way before that near tragedy up at Pico do Paraná. What this episode brought up is that some people also said she didn't have experience with dangerous trails, okay? Remember I mentioned that at the beginning? She said she always said that she had experience with her lifestyle, etc., etc. Right? But then a lot of screenshots came up of people saying no, that she never had experience. The most she had done was a short hike, like half an hour or so, besides reports from people about even more complicated things. Okay? Stuff like, well, I don't know. It's better not to mention those things here because, it's tricky. And another thing, guys, it seems like she kind of fuels the controversies herself. For example, recently she reposted a video on Instagram responding to the criticism she was getting. She wrote that the only people who can hate her are skinny people. Quote, I only accept judgment from skinny people. If you lack my courage or determination, fat, sedentary, lazy, or fearful, stay quiet. We also still have a line of speculation, but we believe it will be handled by the police investigation, okay? And it depends on Roberto's own statement, as I said, because it involves an alleged fight between Thayane and Roberto, something that supposedly happened up at Pico do Paraná and could be the reason behind the irresponsible act that happened there, right, of leaving the guy behind on the trail. Obviously, in cases that get a lot of attention, like this news, doubtful or false things also quickly start to circulate because of the nature of some people, right? To give you an example, the guy's family, totally distressed, Roberto's family, right, asking for help from people who might know the area to help with the search. And other scumbags making posts asking for PIX payments. Man, that's how people are. Some are really rotten, right? Because of other people's lack of character, maybe because of the anonymity of social media, a lot of people get bold. And also, of course, with the reality we're living in now with AI, right? I mean, we can't be sure if an image. It's hard to know if a WhatsApp conversation is trustworthy since several screenshots have surfaced. One example shows an alleged conversation between Thayane and someone else where she mentions having intrusive thoughts about Roberto being dead with a knife to his neck. Either way, it's just too bizarre, isn't it? Remember that in her own post, Thayane made a point of showing that she carried a hunting knife on her body. That's in her carousel of posts from the moment at the bus station up to the climb at the peak. It's on her Instagram. Is the case over, guys? That's the question I ask. I don't know. But what I do know is that I'll be here waiting for updates and really looking forward to Roberto's version of the facts. I hope you enjoyed the summary of this case. Thanks for your company. A kiss from the redhead. See you next episode.